Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. The presidency, after denying the Media Foundation for West Africa an RTI request to release the full report of the KPMG report on the GRA SML Scandal, has now done so. We look into that report in full. Professor Stephen Kuku-Asari, his view of the report is this: the GRA hired SML to plug revenue leakages, but it conspired with SML to leak revenue. Then we look at what the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance was compelled to issue a statement on, and said, quote, "Our concerns are revelations that SNIT and the Rock City Hotel, owned by the current Minister for Agriculture, are engaged in negotiations to purchase 4 hotels, including the Labadi Beach Hotel, one of Ghana's most esteemed and profitable hotels in Ghana. One may ask, what is the public interest justification for a decision like that? And where is the minister raising the resources to acquire these assets? We welcome the actions by Mr. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, the MP, in his petition to Shraj, as it signals an important step towards addressing these issues. We also welcome the intervention of organized labor, TUC and CLOCSAC, as owners of the pension funds. Indeed, everyone who pays SNIT contributions should be interested. And they conclude, these developments raise serious concerns about our fight against corruption and the prospects of accountable governance. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini. We'll be right back to get into the details of these 2 big stories that we are canvassing for you. Welcome back. And here is Samson's take. Ambulance case. Probe the allegations of perversion of justice. In the course of this week, during a trial in the case involving the bizarre ambulance purchase case, where the minority leader in Parliament, Kessel Attoforsen, and others are involved, something happened in the courtroom. One of the accused persons, the third accused, together, who is also a witness, under cross-examination, made some rather serious allegations against the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dame. The allegations forming part of the testimony of this accused person are very serious. And in a country where leaders are serious about building systems of integrity, systems that work, systems that earn the respect in the Committee of Nations, they will be thoroughly investigated. They are serious, very serious, because they border on crime and professional misconduct that could cause the Attorney General to lose his license to practice law permanently. Section 1213 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, 1960, Act 29, makes it a felony to fabricate evidence, to obstruct, and to pervert justice. Rules 13, 40, and 45 of the Legal Profession, Professional Conduct and Etiquette Rules, 2020, LI 2423, variously prohibit a lawyer from advising or suggesting to a witness to give false evidence. And they prohibit prosecution from this kind of conduct. They prohibit communication with a represented person, a person who was a lawyer in a case, to communicate with them without the consent of their lawyers. The nature of the sanctions for such conduct tell the seriousness, especially if proving against an Article 88 officer. Our Attorney General is not only the principal legal advisor to the government, it's not only the lawyer for all of us in the Republic, but he or she combines the office of the Minister for Justice. That is a sacred place. That is not a place for political party persons. He is also the leader of the bar, the leader of lawyers, and plays very critical roles on sensitive boards and committees, as well as representing the country internationally by virtue of his offices. Let those who must do what it takes to safeguard personal integrity, professional conduct and practice, and above all, the office of the Attorney General and Minister for Justice, criminal justice in this country, not let this matter slide. It is consequential, very consequential. I have seen the reaction by the release from the Attorney General's department or under the hand of the Attorney General Deputy. Those reactions do not, with the greatest of respect, answer any of the allegations made in court bordering on an attempt to pervert the course of justice. If there was an attempt to plea bargain, the plea bargaining law is very clear on how to conduct that. You cannot be involved in a plea bargain with the person without their lawyer in the first place. So if it is the case that Japa Richard has been called several times, odd hours, and in meetings with the Attorney General, seeking to convince him to implicate the minority leader in the case, this is serious, and the press release does not answer it. However, the public demand on the judge is unfounded. When testifying as a witness, it is not the province of a judge to demand material proof to a testimony of a witness. No. It is the job of the one who is offering that evidence to make sure that that evidence becomes cogent, that evidence becomes potent and material for the purposes of exonerating them. It is the job of the one cross-examining or the party affected to discredit or disprove that testimony, including by making the demand you seek, that the judge should demand evidence for the claims. A judge's role here arises when the trial is over and the judge is examining the body of evidence, the testimony and documents to make findings of facts and give judgment. We are not in a civil law country where judges participate in the trial directly. We are in a common law country where judges do not descend into the arena. And that is my take. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. My guest, Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani, Africa. Kobina Atabedu is procurement specialist and management consultant. He's right here in the studio with Samuel Nete George, MP, Ningo Prampram, Deputy Ranking Member, Communications Committee of Parliament, and Member, Public Accounts Committee as well. Joining us on Zoom, the second person to join us on Zoom will be Manasseh Azure-Awene, investigative journalist, fellow, Harvard University. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time to join us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Great. Now, let's just have a sneak peek into what brought us here as far as the GRA SML scandal is concerned.
The absence of the ERZMS at that time, where things were done manually and so on, were perhaps part of some of the regulatory challenges. But since that system was installed, a lot of that has been stemmed.
Without this electronic order, BRV cannot enter inside. And this information, when it comes from NPA portal, it is 100% correct.
Once you are able to track whatever is happening on the ERDMS to ICAMs, I mean, by and large, you have tracked all your volumes. And once you get the volumes right, you are likely to get the taxes also correct.
Despite the robustness of the system, the GRA has contracted a third-party company that is taking credit for all the gains made in the sector, making unsubstantiated claims of revenue savings and receiving millions of cedis for a service whose impact or relevance is difficult to ascertain. SML Ghana Limited started what it calls revenue assurance services to the GRA in the downstream petroleum sector in June 2020. The managing director of the company, Christian Tetesoti, says SML is an offshoot of a timber company he will not name. Mr. Soti was Ghana's Controller and Accountant General from 2005 to 2009 and currently a board member of the Internal Audit Agency. He was an Assistant Commissioner of the GRA, and as of 2019, the same time the GRA entered into the agreement with SML, he was the Technical Advisor, the Commissioner General of the GRA. The GRA is the only customer of SML since its establishment.
They didn't have any experience before they started doing this work. There were experienced companies around. There was no bid for this kind of transaction. And suddenly they have become the superior audit institution for the petroleum downstream sector that is getting all contracts. And you ask yourself, what does it take to actually get such contracts?
This is just by inference. Everything shows that somebody was connected, somebody knew about the contract, set up a company, no history in IT, no history in audit, no history in forensics, no history in what we call revenue assurance in telecoms. None of it. And it is given this contract.
Mr. Soti left his job as the technical advisor of the GRA Commissioner General in 2019 to manage SML Ghana in 2020 when the company started its operations for the GRA. SML has its flow meters attached to the pipelines at the depots and records volumes of products that flow through the pipelines and give real-time records of activities at the depots. players in the industry say real-time reading of loading at the depots means nothing because tax or revenue are not collected in real time. Besides, those figures by SML are not used by the revenue authorities to collect taxes or margins.
SML is being paid 5 pesos per liter for every product that is lifted from the depots. You do the simple math. That means they are paying in excess of about 21 million Ghana cedis every month, all right, for the work that they are doing. And that in itself is extremely questionable. These electronic seals that they have, it's not going to cost you $1 million to procure. So why are they staying on by that one-time single investment and taking such colossal amounts of money from the state?
So we have our team also on field, and they are collecting that data. They scan it and it comes straight to our data center.
SML Ghana also scans the way bills that GRA officials at the depots receive for later references. Some sources within the GRA say the GRA officials can scan these documents if they are given the resources to do so. They do not need a third-party company to scan the documents they receive.
We are taking up the responsibility that GRA has to be able to do that revenue assurance and give it to private companies. Because what prevents GRA from doing that one-time investment of ensuring that they can track revenues, even if they want to have a concurrent tracking mechanism with NPA to be able to satisfy themselves?
This is what led to the back and forth between the GRA and the Fourth Estate, the very, very credible research-based journalism hub at the Media Foundation for West Africa. Then on the 29th of December 2023, the president by a letter appointed KPMG to do a number of things. On the 12th of January, the presidency engaged them formally. And then in March, they issued a report. On the 27th of April, was it? 27th of March, they issued the report. Then the president, in April, decided, 27th of April, decided to give some information out of this. The Media Foundation for West Africa filed an application to it, RTI, actually on the 24th of April, seeking that the president releases the full report. They declined. Today, they say that the president has decided to waive his rights to keep this information to himself and made it public. Bright Simmons, we begin with you. Thank you very much. You have followed this, and Imani, ASEP, you have done such a great job in assisting the Fourth Estate to be able to produce this investigative documentary. What, from where you sit, shall we say about the KPMG report?
Thank you very much, Samson. I wonder if you can hear me. I have a bit of a difficulty. I'm traveling, so I'm not using my usual equipment. Are you able to hear me?
Very clearly, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Are you also able to see my screen, sir?
It should be projected shortly. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Wonderful. So I think the challenge here is that we had a summarized version of the report and something that is like a white paper issued by the president, if you recall. So what I'm trying to explain today is whether or not the KPMG report itself, having been issued now, makes a difference. We have to first recognize that KPMG's undertaking, the work that KPMG did, had 3 or more different components. you had a fact finding. Essentially, they went through a research process to establish key facts. They also made some reasoned judgments from those facts, inferences, and then they made opinions. Our position, those of us in civil society, particularly those that have been involved in this matter from the beginning, based off the work that Fourth Estate started with ISEP, our view is that the fact-finding exercises were thorough and useful, but we do not agree with the inferred judgments that were made. And if you give me a few minutes, I will explain how the facts that were established in the report, that were uncovered in the report, do not always support the conclusions that were made, and why, therefore, it was extremely important that the president release this report. And the president should not have waited until the Media Foundation for West Africa filed an RTI, a right to information request, essentially compelling him to release this report. Because without this report, we would not have been able to find the very critical information that we now have that established clearly that some of the conclusions that were reached were actually unnecessary. All we need are the facts. And if you get the facts, you come to the conclusion that this was a very problematic issue. To recap, there were 7 contracts covering 4 services. Of those 4 services, one of them, the upstream petroleum monitoring and the minerals and mining monitoring. So essentially, the monitoring of the oil that we produce in Ghana and the monitoring of the gold and other minerals we produce in Ghana were not active as of the time of this investigation. So essentially, only 3 of the services were active. Of those 3 services, one was in respect of how to prevent importers bringing goods in this country from lying about how much they paid for those goods overseas. The second was to prevent GRA itself from using assessment or making assessments that were not in line with what the invoice information about those imported goods suggests they should have assessed those duties to be. So essentially, you bring in some goods from overseas, GRA is responsible for determining the duty you should pay based on a number of factors. SML's role was to look over the shoulder of GRA to make sure that the declarations they are making about how much you should pay in duty are correct. So keep in mind these 2 key services. How much did you pay for the item, which will impact the duty, and then whether or not, based on the assessed value of how much that you pay for it, the duty that you are due. Also, of course, based on a number of laws and other rules, whether that duty is correct. So those are the 2 services. And the third service was to monitor the sale of petroleum fuels like gasoline and the like in the market, what we call petrol, and to make sure that the people that sell the petrol are paying the right prices. So these are the key areas. Now, here are the discrepancies between what the president told us in his white paper and what we now know from having read the full 300-something page report by KPMG. Number one, the amount of money that KPMG established that this company was paid was significantly more than what the president told us. The president told us they were paid about 1 billion cedis. In actual fact, they were paid about 1.4 billion cedis.
Right.
The discrepancy there is obviously because the presidency decided that the tax amount should not have been included. This is confusing because if you recall, the company itself kept saying that the amount that the president stated, based on the summarized version of the KPMG report, does not take into account the taxes that they had paid.
That's right.
So that's the important point. The truth of the matter, though, is that actually the number that the president gave us already took into account the taxes that have been paid. But bear in mind the amount that I'm talking about, 1.4 billion cedis. That amount is in actual fact more than some of the loans that we get from the World Bank, which sometimes lead to fisticuffs and other unpleasant sights in our parliament because of the sheer importance of our current, the sheer precarity of our current debt situation. So you have to bear in mind the context in which we are speaking. We're talking about a huge amount of money. Money that typically we have to go to the World Bank to borrow. The key principle here is that the money that the president mentioned in this report was net of taxes. So this company actually received more than that amount that was stated in the report. The second critical element, and that critical element is tied to this first point, is that this company actually owes the country taxes. So in addition to receiving all of this money, there is about 31 million cedis in withholding taxes and VAT that this company has still not paid. And that fact was also not in the president's report, because one will have assumed that this is a material point, that this is a company that owes Ghana, and for which reason we have to be worried about that. The second issue is whether or not this amount of money was in actual fact deserved. Did they really do any work, for which reason we ought to pay them 1.4 billion Ghana cedis?
Right, just a second intervention. Did you say over 30 million in taxes or 13 million?
So it's 30 million. So if you look at the
13.38.
No, there's 13.38. But when you look at the total amount of both the VAT and the withholding, it amounts to about 31 million cedis thereabout.
All right.
And you can quote the exact page in a minute. Give me a second. But let me just run through this and then I'll come back to that point.
That's okay.
The issue around whether or not this company deserves this money is, of course, at the heart of this. Because if, of course, Ghana had derived value from this, there will be no problem. If you recall very carefully, a lot of the analysis was based on the view that until this company came in, GRA did not know how much petroleum these companies that sell the petroleum, or let's just use petrol to make it easier. The companies that sell petrol in this country, they lie about how much they are selling. And if you lie about how much you are selling, you also lie about how much taxes you pay. But the taxes are on the volumes. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you look carefully at the report and now you read the entire report, it becomes apparent that all of this confusion is just simple, logical analysis gone wrong. And I will explain in a moment. So what you are seeing on the screen now is essentially the argument that has been made that until about 2020, when this company came in, GRA was declaring volumes of petrol sold on which taxes have been paid. That was just a little above half of what it should have been. And then, since this company came in, the amount of fuel that GRA is declaring is now closer to what actually comes into the country. So the first logical flaw there is that we know how much fuel comes to the country, because that is how we're able to compare what GRA is using to charge taxes and what actually should have been the case. So the NPA data has never been in dispute. In fact, the gap that we claim is the result of under declaration, which this company is solving. That gap comes about because we know from NPA what the fuel amount should be. So that's the first logical flaw, which tells us that it's not about not knowing about the amount of fuel in circulation. It's about some companies being able to evade tax, even when we know they pick up the fuel and sold it. So that's the first logical flaw. The second logical flaw, which comes from the reporting, is that GRA had challenges with its information because initially it was reliant on what the companies declare in their tax filings. Now, that problem is a very simple problem. It came about because until August 2018, there was no connection between the data that we get at the ports through a system that now we call ICAMS, and before then had different names, including GCMS, and it was managed by a company called SNIT, and is today managed by a company called GhanaLink. Now, that particular system gives us indication as to how much petrol is coming to the country. Now, until this matter changed, until this development occurred, which you've seen on the screen, there was no connection between that platform, the port system, and the GRA system. And it's only in August 2018 that an attempt was done. And then soon thereafter, the companies that were involved were kicked out, or attempts were made to kick them out. And in the process of attempts being made to kick them out and trying to transition between that system and the new system called GhanaLink, we had a gap period. Now, if you look at it very carefully, it's in 2020 that this new ICUMS or ICAMS was integrated fully into the GRA system. Now, when you go back and you look into the KPMG report and you look at the discrepancy period and then the non-discrepancy period, it becomes extremely apparent that the only thing that was missing was this integration. Let me explain very carefully. What you see on the left-hand side of the screen, where it says pre-SML, is the period before SML was engaged. And what SML has been trying to convince us is that this gap between what GRA used to, the information GRA has, and the information NPA, which is the main regulator, has, was due to under-declaration. And then what you see on the screen, the green and the blue, is when they came into the picture, and they are trying to prove to you that there was a convergence. That gap vanished. What I'm trying to explain to you is that the red line that you see in the middle is the period during which is April 2020, is that period when ICAMS was integrated into GRE's platform. And if you see it carefully, you see that it comes before May 2020, when this new company, the black line that you see, the black dotted line, when this company came. So you see that the convergence, the green and the red, converging together appears before SML actually comes to the picture. Yeah. And that is what we see in the KPMG report on page 157.
Right.
And that line you see is the dates or the period in which ICAMS, which is at the port, was integrated into the GRE platform. So it tells you clearly that before SML was brought into the picture, that convergence, that narrowing of the gap between the green line, which represents the MPA data, and the red line, which represents the GRE, had already happened. You can see it clearly now. And this is in page 157 of the KPMG report. And this information the president refused to share with us. Another thing that you also see in the KPMG report that the president refused to share with us, and why, therefore, Media Foundation for West Africa and Fourth Estate had to force him to do so through the RTI process, and which, if that had not happened, we would not have known, is the fact that actually KPMG already told the president that a lot of the increases in revenue we saw was not due to SML's work, but was due to the fact that tax rates were changing. Of course, prices of petroleum have also been changing. So if petrol prices go up over time, and then you have ad valorem taxes, those ad valorem taxes will go up.
Common
when you have
sense.
specific taxes, if the taxes themselves go up, then the volume will go up. And that is also in page 158 of the KPMG report, which the president refused to share with the people of Ghana. So that information was captured, but was not shared. So what you have to bear in mind, as I explained at the very beginning, is that we have fact-finding, and then we have inferences from the facts, and we have opinions.
Right.
What we are saying is that rely on the facts, and if you rely on the facts, it comes to the conclusion, you come to the conclusion clearly that the SML contribution was useless. Another critical thing that I'm going to wrap up very soon, another critical thing we learn in the report, which the president doesn't tell us, is that the SML flow meters, you remember those ultrasonic flow meters they say they went to put in the various depots and therefore prevented the companies from lying to us? Well, in the report, if you look carefully at the findings of KPMG, it turns out that those devices were not working, because some of the companies, or actually more all of the companies, tend to flush the pipes with water. So that confuses the readings. So throughout the period in which these flow meters were installed, they were not effective, and nobody was using that data for anything, because you couldn't use it for assurance. There were discrepancies. It was in August 2023, years after they started, that they decided that because the flow meters don't work, they're going to put what we call automatic tank gauges. And they started to establish them. They only managed to put 5 of them in place, all of them in the government-controlled depots, which is BOST, where we have the least problems if our assumption is that it's private companies that are cheating the government. So in effect, nothing that SML did during that period contributed anything whatsoever to the under-declaration. The fourth critical thing we also learned from the report is that GRA did write to the Ministry of Finance and asked the Ministry of Finance to conduct a value for money analysis in order for this to be established, whether or not, because remember, this whole deal was imposed on GRA. It was imposed on GRA by Ministry of Finance. So the question was, GRA then said, or rather the development was that GRA wrote to the Ministry of Finance as late as far back as 2021, asking them to conduct a value for money analysis in order to establish whether or not this service was delivering any benefits. What we know is that they refused to do it. They wrote letters back saying they were going to do it, and they never did it till now. And the last point, which is actually very fascinating, is that in the KPMG report, we learned that some of the services that SML provided, particularly the ones to do with trying to prevent importers from lying about the prices of the goods that they buy, which will affect the duty, and trying to prevent GRA officers from lying about the right duty they should impose, those services, the database around the price information, that database that was being charged for the TVAS was being charged at an astronomical cost. We ended up paying over $15 million, nearly $16 million. $16 million. When in fact, you have alternatives on the open market, which will have cost us barely $20,000. So keep that in mind. We ended up paying nearly $16 million to help, for these companies to apparently help us prevent importers from lying about the prices of the goods they bought overseas to sell in this country, when we could just have simply subscribed to commercial databases and paid less than $20,000 or thereabout for the same information. Thank you very much, Samson.
Just one question for you, and many Ghanaians are asking, what's the end game? What should be the end game on the back of this report? Okay, several. One, we need a complete overhaul of the single sourcing regime in this country. It is clear that 90% of the time when they use this single sourcing method, they have something to hide and it leads to losses to the country. So that's number one. Number two, we need to look carefully at the entire revenue assurance logic in this country. We have a situation where in telecoms, we have a company called KPMG that is supposed to be keeping the telecom companies honest. We don't have any evidence whatsoever that the presence of this company that takes millions of dollars every month has led to any gains to the state. We collect maybe $100 and something million in taxes, and we end up paying almost $30 million to a company to collect it. What is the point of this logic? So revenue assurance is a problem in the petroleum sector, in the downstream sector. We have a number of other initiatives of this kind. We need now to initiate a branch, step, and root evaluation of the benefits of all these systems and then act accordingly. Thirdly, it was very clear that the contracts as it currently, the contracts as they currently exist, the consolidated contract, is not in Ghana's interest. We also know that we spent a lot of money buying some equipment and software and things like that. I think it is now time for the government to be very clear and upfront with us. How does it intend to extract value from the existing software and the hardware that were established? GRA has come out to say that it intends to implement the president's recommendations. But those were not recommendations. As I was trying to explain, the president's recommendations are at variance with what were in the report. So we now need a proper independent commission by people that have absolutely no interest in this matter and have the right credentials and the like of it, to come up with a real roadmap as to how we extricate ourselves from this really damaging situation that we find ourselves with SML. We pay so much money for nothing gained. And then we've created a room for potential judgment debts. So we need a very careful, thoughtful process to extricate ourselves. And then lastly, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that some people are able to go get away with not paying taxes in the petroleum sector? What are the political arrangements that are there that assures them and give them protection? These are all matters that have come out from this report. And I think that as a country, we need to be bold, daring, open-minded, and willing to really have a go at this so that we solve it permanently and not have this recurrent problem of people just taking our money for nothing. Thank you very much, Bright. And Bright, I realize also, maybe final question to you, that you are concerned about the posture of the presidency in declining or refusing the request to release the full documents. And you find that even when it is being released, now the presidency obviously struggles to explain. So it dedicates over a page or so to explain its defense, why it did not release the report. Why is that an important point for you?
The truth of the matter is that when the president commissions these kinds of reports, if they come from institutions that have access to national security information and the likes of it, you could make the argument that they are privileged. So if, for instance, this had been an intelligence report based on investigations into how the tax evasion was happening in the first place, or if there was suspected corruption and the president needed a preliminary basis, then you can make the argument that this is privileged information because the president is being guided on matters that at that very point it's not meant for public engagement. This was a very different situation. This was a matter that was already in the public domain.
Right.
This was a matter where the president himself had advised, had informed the public that was conducting this study in order to address the public controversy. Remember, thirdly, KPMG is not an organization that has national security or other types of clearances for which reason information it handles can be properly called privileged. All the information that KPMG collected are information that ought to be in the public domain. Information about whether or not a particular system that is supposed to be helping with assurance in the downstream petroleum sector, whether or not a transaction services, audit service, etc., is working, are technical matters. And in the Act, we call them factual and statistical for the most part. So the argument the president made that they are privileged is extremely shaky. The argument is on very shaky legs.
Right.
Because if you look at the report as it's been currently disclosed, what about this report is classified? What about it is classified? Everything in this report is meant for the public. So my view is that it's not a matter of blanket privilege to say that every time I'm advised, that advice must remain a privilege.
All right.
Must only remain privilege if the people that are advising you have reasons for which the public should not be informed. And I don't think this is the case in this scenario.
Okay, thank you very much. And as someone who has played a lead role in this process for the RTI and still doing work in this area, writing and researching for its advancement, it is something that is clear to me that when you quote Section 5, you quote Section 5(1), B(a) and B and I of it to say that this information is exempt merely because it has been presented to the presidency or the vice president for consideration and has recommendations, advice, and so on, is something that cannot be accurate. The controller of that provision in law is the last part of it, that it is likely to undermine, if you disclose the information, it is likely to undermine the deliberative process on the part of the president or the vice president. This is the controller of that provision. So if you are releasing it, the question to ask is, will it undermine, is it likely to undermine the deliberative process? The question to ask is, the report has been issued. The president actually issued a report on the back of the report. Is there anything outstanding for deliberation? That is the question. And more importantly also, for those who use these processes in the government agencies and the rest, always pay attention not only to the exempt clauses. The exempt clauses, they are carefully crafted. So you see that they are qualified. They are not overbroad and say because of this, it's carefully qualified. And they are all from sections 5 through to 16. They are eventually controlled by section 17. I'll read that and get to Atabedu, and then we bring on Sam George. Section 17 says, disclosure for the protection of public interest. Despite a provision of this act on information exempt from disclosure, so it doesn't matter that the information is exempt from disclosure. Information is not exempt from disclosure if the disclosure of the information reveals evidence of a contravention of or a failure to comply with law. This KPMG report, there is a contravention and a failure to comply with law. The law says even if it is exempt and there is a contravention, it is not exempt. And I see that they quote a case I did for the Media Foundation for West Africa. They quote it wrongly to try to support their situation. They didn't name the case. The final point here is that if the disclosure of the information will outweigh, the benefit of the disclosure will outweigh any danger, the law says disclose it. What's your reading of the report?
When you played back the video, obviously
you were listening to yourself.
You saw me in there, and I had dissected it.
Yeah.
And concluded that it shouldn't have been in the first place.
That was before the report. Now we have the report.
Now we have the report.
306 pages.
That it shouldn't have been. Now, I'll go to some basic principles.
All right.
For example, before you engage a vendor, we go through a pre-qualification. The Procurement Act specifies it. Now, whilst you are pre-qualifying, there are certain requirements which are more legal or regulatory in nature. Like the company should be registered, blah, blah, blah. Then, depending on the nature of the service that is to be provided, you ask yourself, is this a regulated service or it's an open service? If it's a regulated service, what are the requirements? So, for example, if you read the ICA Act, what services they are providing qualifies as what is defined or described as public practice of accountancy. It means the institution should have been licensed by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. The question is, are they licensed? So as a procurement person, when I'm doing pre-qualification, it will be one of the first requirements I would make. Show me proof. And I can take you to the ICA Act.
You're still here on Newsfile. It is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first.
Section 35(1) says that for the purpose of this act, a person is engaged in public practice of accountancy if the person acting alone or in partnership with another person and in consideration of remuneration received or to be received engages in the practice of accountancy or portrays to the public that the person is a member of the institute. Offers to perform or performs a service involving auditing or verification of financial transactions, books or records, or the preparation, verification, and certification of financial accounting reports and related statements. So B here defines what the service is and what they are doing. And C says, renders professional service or assistance in respect of matters that in principle or detail relate to accounting procedure and certification of financial facts and data. So when you are verifying volumes and all of that, it means you should be under the regulation of the ICA. The first question I would ask the GRA as the procurement entities, do they have that to prove that they are qualified to do this? Then you come to procurement, the Procurement Act. And I listened to Bright, and Bright said that there's the need to overhaul the single source. There's no need to overhaul it. It's black and white. I'll take you to that part.
It's the abuse of it.
It's the abuse of it.
Okay, so take us there and tell us why.
Now, go to section 40 of 663 as amended.
Right.
41 says, a procurement entity may engage in single source procurement under section 41 with the approval of the board. With the approval, it is a condition precedent. It requires prior approval. You don't do it and come back. Where goods, works, or services are only available from a particular supplier or contractor. So the question is accounting services and audit services only available from a particular person? Obviously, no. So it doesn't qualify.
This was their first, and the government has been their only client, so to speak, customer.
That itself is questionable and raises a lot of corporate governance questions.
As the report said, they began and they were incorporated in 2017, February. They started as SMEL. That's what the report said, SMEL. And they were incorporated on the 14th of February 2017. Then June to September 2017, GRA made 3 unsuccessful attempts to obtain the PPA's approval to single source SMEL to provide transaction audit services. November 2017, SMEL then changed its name to SML. Then June 2018, SML got appointed as a subcontractor to West Blue Ghana Limited as a service provider to the GRA. Then later, the contract was extended and so on. It became the main contractor without PPA approval. You said the condition is not subsequent, it's precedent.
Yes. Now, the subcontractor part is also a bit baffling. But let me proceed and then I'll come to that part.
Go ahead, please.
So if you look at the exclusions, the basis for single sourcing, this is not proprietary.
Right.
Next one is about urgency of need. There's no urgency here. Next one is about catastrophic events. There's no catastrophic event. So if you look at the criteria for getting approval for single sourcing, it doesn't qualify. That is why on 3 occasions they were denied.
Okay.
Now, once a change of name happened, the question should have raised this thing that something is not right. Why have they changed the name? Then they decided to do subcontracting. And you guys are lawyers. Standard drafting. Provisions of a contract where it talks about assignments, contracting, novation, and the like. It also requires prior approval. So you cannot appoint a subcontractor without the prior approval of the principal. It's a standard clause. So the question is, who appointed them? West Blue. The presumption is that West Blue has already gone through the process and has been appointed and given a scope of services. So this scope of service that was subcontracted to these guys, was it originally in West Blue's contract? Because if it was not there, they don't even have the mandate to subcontract it to somebody.
How about if it got amended subsequently?
They should bring the proof.
That West Blue amended its contract and said that we will subcontract to someone else.
And if you are going to, because West Blue's contract is a multi-year contract,
okay,
it should have gone to Parliament. PPA would have given approval. So if you are going to vary the scope of their contracts with such materiality, you are supposed to go back. And in this case, looking at the amount involved, the threshold would have required that it would go as far as the Central Tender Review Board. So people would have been able to look into it. The question is, where was the Central Tender Review Board in all of this? So GRA on its own could not or should not have subcontracted through West Blue. Now, in describing the formation of the company and the principles behind it, and if you read the ICA Act, it is very clear. If the principal behind the company is a former auditor general, who left that job and immediately surfaced here.
Controller General.
Immediately surfaced here. Immediately, from a corporate governance perspective.
But remember, it's not only Controller General. He left there and went to the GRA.
Not Controller, Commissioner General.
Commissioner General.
No.
He used to be a commissioner. He was a deputy. He was
Controller General.
Yeah.
The Accountant General. Sorry.
Accountant General, yes.
The one who pays your public officer. And then moved to GRA, where he was working for the Commissioner General.
So if you look at his stature, he has the ability to exert influence. And so when you, from a corporate governance perspective, when you are analyzing conflict of interest, one of the variables is the person in a position to exert influence? And you can see it clearly there. So is it that influence that forced the authorities at GRA to do everything humanly possible to make sure that this contract comes into fruition?
Your concern will be that when this contract was going through all the processes, he was there.
He was there.
Then he left and became the managing director of this company.
Either he was there or he would have stepped out, but he still had influence. So it raises code of conduct issues, it raises conflict of interest issues before all the others will come in. Now, if you come to the Act, PPA Act again, this has happened. The media blitz has already happened. What has been the actions of the PPA subsequent to this? They have the power to revisit it. If we go to section 83 or 89, let me get there.
But they had ratified. Once the ratification came in...
That is why I'm going to it.
To the mother contract, then
That is why I'm going to...
Everything else that was sinful had been cured.
No. See, okay, so let me explain the thinking behind it. The Act says, I have these procurement methods, and you are supposed to use them in this way. At any point in time, when the board finds reason to believe that there's been a violation, it has the authority to appoint an investigator. So before an investigator would have been appointed, there is some form of prima facie evidence that there's been a contravention. Now the investigator is supposed to go and find out the details of it. When the investigator is done with his job, he brings a report back to them. When he establishes that there's been a violation, it means that a contract has already been done. So a liability has been created for the state or for the entity. So in this section, what the board is mandated to do per the Act is that after reviewing it, you can cancel it.
That's correct.
But if canceling it would create, for example, a judgment debt, which is not worth canceling, then you can ratify it. It gives other options they can use.
That's right.
But the question is, it doesn't take away the fact that there's been a violation. And the Act further prescribes in Section 90 down what should be done to people who contravene the Act. My question is, in all their ratifications, and this particular board has done a lot, what has happened to people who contravene the Act?
What does the Act say should be done to those who contravene the Act? And
it specifies penalties.
Yes.
But also where they find that something on top
share them directly with us.
Okay.
And then we'll bring on Sam George, also having read the report so far. What are his views on them? This is Newsfile, it's almost authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And you just sent in a message, say, why am I allowing Bright Simmons to poo-poo the report of KPMG and question their judgment? He applauds their findings, but their inferences he has issues with, and he should be entitled to do so. Even a court judgment is not sacrosanct, like Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh will say. Finality does not connote infallibility. We obey the Supreme Court because its word is final, but it is not because its word is infallible. Yes.
Section 92 says that, 92(1) says that a person who contravenes a provision of this Act commits an offense, and where a penalty is not provided for the offense, that person is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding 2,500 penalty units, or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or both the fine and the imprisonment.
Interesting.
Now, further, because of the IOCO Act and the SFO Act, the authority can forward the dossier to any of these, because they are procurement offenses, for them to further.
Procurement offenses for which some people have lost their office, independent constitutional office.
Yes.
For which Martin Amidu says Kisei Jabin should be removed as a special prosecutor.
So these people can also take it up and actually prosecute the person and make sure that the person get the right punishment.
But after your reading of this 306-page report, do you say this is all that should happen, or there is something else that must happen?
There's more. The report now points you in the places you should look. And if you go and look at all of them, you find out, just like I've pointed out that the ICA Act has been violated, you find out that the Public Financial Management Act has been violated, you find out that Internal Audit Agency Act has been violated. So you find out that a lot of other acts have been violated. What happens to all of them?
Interesting. Yes, Sam George.
Let me say a very good morning to you and Atabedu, and then the viewers across the country. Something I'll just start by saying that your take is a very serious one that you had this morning, and that we should take very seriously as a country. I hope we don't reduce it to political football because of the sacrosanct see that how sacrosanct that office is. Let me also say a happy AU Day to our viewers and hope that one day Africa can be truly free. On this issue, I think that Bright and Atta have done very extensive work. And I wouldn't want to flog the issues anymore, but I think that we are all added them on the fact that clearly this SML to SML, from SMEL to SML deal is the classic example of what Justice Doche meant when he said create, loot, and share. One of the key things we must bear in mind is that all of this happened with the tacit approval of the then Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. As usual, he's trying to run under the radar, and people are failing to realize the key cardinal role he played in this entire arrangement. Look, I'm being careful my choice of words. And I said to someone said to me that seeing my face on TV this morning looks like I was coming to release fire, and I said I would do it with a smile. The Ghana Revenue Authority, in my humble opinion, is a crime scene and is the biggest single purveyor of corruption in our public service.
That's an unfair statement.
I'd explain.
That's too broad and sweeping.
I know. But, Samson, if you know half of the things that I know, you would ask for the dissolution of the GRA and a reconstitution of the whole GRA. Look, the GRA is supposed to be the watchdog, ensuring that nobody evades taxes. In this SML deal, the GRA itself failed to withhold tax. You introduced me as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. Several institutions appear before the Public Accounts Committee because the Auditor General had found out that they carried out transactions with institutions and failed to withhold tax. In fact, sometimes we impose penalties on them to pay with interest.
KPMG in this report said it has alerted GRA to make a demand for the amounts not paid, and they have made the amount to SML.
No, you see, that is the VAT component. But the withholding tax is not supposed to be withheld by SML.
That's correct.
It's by GRA in making the payments.
That's correct.
So when GRA was making payments to SML, they ought to know that they ought to have withheld taxes. But that points to the point Atta tried to make, that it appears as though the GRA itself is under duress in this deal, where officers of the GRA, because of the overwhelming influence of the patriarchs of SML and their relationship with the GRA, people are under so much duress that they are failing to even carry out the basic, forget the procurement things that I was spoken about, those are even like very complex things. The basic thing, okay, you've created looting and you are sharing. The small withholding tax, that is the base. That also, the GRA itself. So when the policeman is involved in armed robbery, who arrests him?
Because if any firm in this country fails to withhold tax, the GRA, after an audit, makes the firm pay up that amount it failed to withhold.
With a penalty.
With a penalty.
With a penalty.
And the penalty is up to 300%.
Yes.
That is their own law that they implement.
So you see the earlier statement I made, and this is just one example of how the GRA itself, in fact, this is one of its core things, ensuring the payment or withholding of taxes and all of that. Samson, when you look at the entire, and Bright Simon spoke about it, this whole revenue assurance business. In principle, let me state it emphatically here, I don't think that revenue assurance is a bad thing. But revenue assurance has become the biggest looting avenue in the state. And look, I will be fair here and honest here. It is not peculiar to only this government.
Thank you.
It's something that private enterprise has seen as a lacuna. uses the whole concept of revenue assurance to corrupt public officials, to loot the state in connivance with them. We all heard how members of this government, in fact, members of parliament today, in fact, one of them is a sector minister, Esther Usu. She sat on this your platform and sang with Suba in a song. You remember? How Suba was wrong. What was Suba? It was signed under the NDC. Suba was a revenue assurance in the telecom sector. She said it was wrong, it was criminal. She sang with it and campaigned with it. She came into office, and what did she do? She signed Kelny GVG and paid more than Suba was being paid. Whilst the communications ministry has a legitimate issue with determining what is really going on with the telecom sectors, with the telecom operators, because take it from me, the MNOs are stealing from the state. MTN, Telecel, Airtel, Tigo, they are not declaring their true revenues. We all know it. So we need to find a way to determine what really is due the state. That's one thing.
So,
but the GRA,
how to do that is revenue assurance.
That's a statement you've made.
Yes, and they know. Ask people in the telecom sector.
That's unfair.
No, Ata, you see, you cannot approbate and reprobate because you are in the telecom sector. You know that the amounts that are declared to the state, if we were to do proper real-time monitoring, we don't have visibility. Today, the state of Ghana does not have true visibility on transactions that are going on all the telecom platforms. Tell me I'm lying. Yes or no? Am I lying or
I wouldn't want to go into the details of it, but I can assure you that I agree with you on one breath that whole business of revenue assurance is unnecessary. So it shouldn't have been either way on both sides.
He didn't say it's unnecessary. He says it's a conduit for corruption. It is like the easiest way to steal from the state. The state says, I don't know exactly how to measure this thing. Then it goes to bring in private enterprise. Measure it for me. And then through that process, money is shared.
Let's not digress. I'm sure we can.
But you see, the point I was making, and the point I was trying to make with GRA, because I'm establishing the modus operandi at the GRA. Whether it is Suba under the NDC or Kelny GVG under the MPP, bottom line is these two arrangements were supposed to provide the GRA with some information from CDRs to be able to determine tax liability, even though these contracts were signed under the NCA, which is the agency under the Ministry of Communications. Both under the NDC and under the current MPP administration, the GRA has gone to sign parallel revenue assurance contracts with a company whose registration has been dissolved in the UK before they even signed the contract with them, called Safari Tech. And you see, if you follow all the things that have been happening with SML and what is on their website and what is in reality, and when you go into Safari Tech's office is a tailoring shop. When you look at the address on their thing, the GPS, and even the fiscal address, when you go, it's a tailoring shop in Bachona.
Oh.
I'm telling you. Look, I have here, I can show you.
So we are unable to independently confirm and verify. You know,
I've mentioned the name of the company.
Claims. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So I'm saying that
that's why
go
it's
on
important.
their website. Look, and I've said this publicly before.
We are unable to verify this.
It's not a problem.
Independently for now.
This is their UK incorporation.
And I will urge you to keep your focus on the subject of SML.
Yes.
Now.
No, I'm building a case on why SML has happened, because it fits into a trend. And so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if you bring in an entity that is not here to answer, it is unfair.
Oh, this matter,
so
I've
proceed.
based it with the GRA at public accounts and they've admitted. So it's a matter of public records. You understand me? But I'm showing you and establishing for you that the GRA itself has seen that agencies of state are doing this revenue assurance business. And so it's an easy way. Let's ask ourselves, revenue is what? It is the core mandate of the GRA. Is that not the core mandate of the GRA? Revenue collection. And so if the GRA says that the revenue collection, which is their core mandate, They are unable to verify and assure us that the revenue they are collecting is proper. And they now need a private sector player to come and give them assurance of their core mandates. Then why is the GRA there? You see, at I'm coming, this SML deal, can the GRA show us a needs assessment that was done that showed the need for this particular?
The report says there was no needs assessment. In fact, the job that the president gave to KPMG,
yes,
the very first of the terms of reference was needs assessment.
Yes.
And they confirmed conclusively that there was not any such.
Why? Why is there no, why, and even if we had done a needs assessment, because if you read the KPMG report, it clearly ends up by telling you that whatever SML was doing was unnecessary. It was duplication. So even if you did a needs assessment, the needs assessment would have highlighted the fact that there was no need for it.
Mechanisms already
Why?
for doing that.
Because the NPA had put in place a mechanism. So you realize what I'm doing? What I'm doing for you is I'm establishing, and that's why I went into the telecom sector, to establish how when an agency in a sector puts in place its own mechanisms, the GRA then duplicates it and pays people for no work done. The same way they've done with revenue assurance in the telecom sector, the NPA is responsible for this.
And pays people who are suspected to be supplanted. So they go set up a company and somebody is interested in it. Yes. Then they give you the contract. They are paying to the company, but in actual fact, they are paying themselves.
Exactly. Who are the beneficial owners?
Let me correct something Sam George made, a point Sam George made. In principle, we call it make or buy decision making in procurement. Anything that has to be done can either be done by yourself or do it through someone. It is when you decide to do it through someone that you are activating your procurement process to find a third party to do it for you. So they have responsibilities per their act.
But sadly, our governments cannot do things by themselves. If they have to buy cars, they need a third party to go and buy them. If they have to buy ambulances, they know where to find them in the shop. They will still get a third party to go and buy them. What's going on in this country?
Now, this thing is directly connected to the pricing model as well, or the commercial model of the whole arrangement. So let me break it down to the layman's, simple man understanding.
But be brief, because it is some judge's presentation you are interrupting.
I want to serve 10 people kinky. If I decide to do it myself, I'm going down the value chain to go and buy the maize. Come and soak it, mill it, make the kinky, add the fish, make the pepper. How much time will I spend? How much will it cost me? If it will cost me 10 cedis, 100 cedis to do it, it means if I give it to someone else, it will cost the person the same 100 cedis if we went to the same market. The only reason why I'll go to the someone else is because I'm only making kinky for 10 people, but that person makes kinky for 1,000 people.
When your job is kinky making, you don't give the job to somebody else. That's what some judge is saying.
The point I'm making here.
So before they even determine the pricing model that has ensured they have paid so much, they would have done the supply chain cost modeling, which helps you to build all the costs from base up. And it will tell you that I have to spend X to do it. Now, one, I don't have the resources to do it, or the people to do it. Two, I don't have the money to do it. I don't have this, so I'm giving it to a third party. So before you engage the person, and that is when you prepare to go into negotiation, you know that this is what it will cost me to do it. So plus or minus, if you want a profit of, let's say, 100%, the ceiling should be this. So you are going into negotiation, you always have your entry point and your exit point. And that defines the frame within which you...
I hear you loud and clear, but you see the point I'm making here, that's with your kinky analysis. That's exactly the point Samson interjected with, that if your business is kinky making, you need to explain to us why you are not making the kinky and now subletting to another kinky maker to do it. And that's why I started by saying, in principle, I'm not against revenue assurance.
Yeah.
When a regulator like the NCA, whose job it is to ensure the quality of service, decides that they need a third party to do revenue assurance, I can understand, because they are not kinky makers. But when an entity that is a revenue collection agency
has to build internal competence,
you have to build internal competencies, because that's what your job is. Because the amount of money that has been paid to SML, just SML, are you telling me that if we use that money to build the capacity of people in GRA, we couldn't have done this job.
And in this case, let's not forget that people within regulators of the industry, including in the state, have said that this is a duplication.
Yes. Yes. And you see, the point must be made that even in setting up this entity, it is someone from GRA who then goes to run the thing. So basically, it's like GRA hiving off itself, giving itself a private face, and saying to it, do their job, and now what I would have earned a salary from the taxpayer for, only a salary, let me earn a commercial interest in it. And so that's why I'm saying that, look, we need to come to that place where we admit and accept that, look, there is a need for deep reforms at the GRA. The GRA must understand what it is doing.
There's been some radical changes there in the last few months. Yeah.
Well, those changes, are they superficial? Are they consequential? Time will tell. But you see, Samson, we need to ask ourselves very serious questions. Because as we speak, the GRA is engaged in all kinds of procurement. There's one, if I start talking about it now, you say it's not this matter. But domestic tax revenue, I'm sure you know about it. With Tata, IPMC, and all of that. Look, interesting things are going on in the GRA, which should worry any Ghanaian, because the GRA sets its own question, sets its marking scheme, and answers it. Oh, we set this target for ourselves. Look, Samson, the corruption. And when I started, I said that the GRA was arguably the most corrupt institution. You know why I say this? I can confidently say that my district, my constituency, is the fastest growing industrial district in Ghana. Because almost all the industries are moving into Nengo and Pram Pram because of proximity to the Tema and the fact that Tema is full. And so they're setting up. And the constant complaint I get from industries, which are largely foreign owned by foreigners, but Ghanaian entities, is that, Sam, what is wrong with your country's people? GRA officials are basically hounding these businesses with atrocious tax demands, and then after they do that, the same officials come to them and say, well, either you change your headquarters from Ghana to Togo, and we can waive some of the taxes, or we cut a deal with you. And foreigners are asking me, what is wrong with your own country people? Look, let us call a spade a spade. This SML thing is just the tip of the iceberg. And that's why I'm saying that we should not sound ourselves hoarse. We must go beyond the SML, the face, what's his name? Soti. Soti is the face that has been put to it. Who are the patrons? Who are the facilitators? The beneficial owners of what Soti is doing. Something, per our laws, per the ruling in the Isofoton case, and correct me if I'm wrong, if a contract is null and void, payments made are retrievable. Yeah. Am I right?
So the agencies concerned are not even supposed to make payments?
Absolutely. So if we have paid 1.4 billion to a company that was set up on Valentine's Day, the first Valentine's Day after Nanado became president, February 14, 2017. They set it up as a love gift to themselves. And then within 3 months of setting up that illicit love child, they tried to get the PPA 3 times to approve sole sourcing. The same sole sourcing we were told by President Akufo-Addo was so wrong under President Mahama. Was the worst thing to ever happen. And even in this time, even with the incompetence, in quotes, or the lack, no, not incompetence, the lack of competence, because incompetence and lack of competence are different. Even with the apparent lack of competence at the board level of the PPA, they were able to state and say, hey, this thing, it doesn't meet the base requirement. How they are able to squeeze it through. And don't forget, the GRA, like I keep saying, works at the behest and reports to the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
So we must ask questions of Ken Ofori-Atta. We must ask questions of Reverend Amishadai, under whose watch this thing happened. Because don't forget, Soti was an advisor to him. And then he goes to set up this company, and Amishadai is paying his own former advisor. Okay. You know, something.
Let me go on the. Let me go on the.
Let me straighten my face. I said I'll say everything. I'll say with a smile.
Let me go to Manasseh, but before I do that, I need to state this again. that for those entities that Sam George has mentioned their names and made allegations against, we are not in a position to independently verify those adverse claims against them. And on that note, we will not be associated with those commentaries.
In fact, I'm using your platform to challenge them to dispute my claims so that I put out everything that I know.
Yes, but it appears you are suspicious of everything. And like we say, the courts have confirmed, you know, a multitude of suspicions do not constitute proof of anything.
Absolutely.
Let me go to Manasseh.
Me, I have my evidence here and my facts, and I hear you. To Amisha,
let me go to Manasseh. Manasseh, thank you very much. There are many who are asking, but why is it that Manasseh is being vilified over this contract, including journalists who have made it a point to just project your photograph and insult you in the front of cameras for doing a research work together with your colleagues to unravel what has led to this KPMG report. To start with, you must be pleased that this report has led to the termination of 2 of the contracts and the suspension of the upstream minerals audit deal, which some civil society have said is just a rebirth of a JAPA that the government was seeking to corruptly benefit from our mineral resources through a JAPA. And when it didn't get it, it decided to give a contract to SML to do this so that they will siphon money. You are happy 2 contracts terminated, the upstream suspended, right?
Well, partially happy, as in the words used for some of the deliveries of SML, because there is more to this. I am not a lawyer, but I've reported on issues that went to court and some people went to jail. And I sincerely believe that looking at this report and what we know from the admissions made by officials of the GRA and SML, this is a case that has a number of candidates for jail. If any government wants to take this up, it is going to be very easy to put people to jail. It is going to be very easy for us to even retrieve hundreds, if not billions, of cedis paid to people who did not deserve a peswa. From the very beginning, we made a point, and it was not an opinion piece we wrote in that report. We interviewed GRA officials, the petroleum unit, and we actually wrote a letter from the Commissioner General directed that the petroleum department was better suited to speak to us. We went to SML. In that investigation, we went with a camera, not an AK-47. So there was no cohesion. We asked questions and they confessed and deleted the claims they made to be providing the services. And this report actually makes some of us, I agree with Bright that the conclusion or the inference from KPMG is problematic, but it gives enough facts for us to be able to now know and can say that the GRA and the Office of the President may have lied. I'm saying lied and not falsehood, because if you have information, you know what is right, and your officials confirm on record, and you produce something that is different from your own facts to just make this company look good.
Tell us why you make such a statement.
So let's go to page 153 of the KPMG, sorry, 157 of the KPMG report. We said that SML did not do anything that deserved any payment. And the GRA issued a statement, and I am talking about the GRA the management and the board of the GRA. And shortly before I report, the board chairman of GRA, who is a very known and celebrated businessman, I'm talking about Mr. Otenjesi, saying that procurement was avenue through which people loot the state, and he wondered why private entities or organizations would do due diligence when procuring for their companies, but when it had to do with the state, they didn't care.
But you know, he's resigned his position, right? He's left the place.
I'm talking about the board chair who was there when these deals happened, and the board chair led the board of GRA to visit this place.
Okay.
So
and again, just a quick one. There was a reference to Christian Soti working under Amishadai. He actually worked under Kofi Nti and not Amishadai. Yes, go on, Manasseh.
So let me go to the page 157 of the report. And it says, an average of key findings, an average of 400 million liters per month was already being recorded in Ghana in 2019 and the first quarter of 2020, as per review of NPA's data. 2, NPA and GRA recorded a significant decrease in lifting volumes in April 2020. That is 336 million and 311 million liters respectively as a result of COVID-19 lockdown spanning the period 1 to 20 April 2020. 3, volumes recorded after April 2020 were constantly above 400 million liters. Then the final figure in this on this page says, in the latter half of 2020, when SML commenced operation, data comparison from 3 sources indicates that NPA reported higher annual volumes than both GRA and SML. Following NPA and GRA reported the next highest, following NPA, GRA reported the next highest annual volumes, with SML recording the lowest annual volumes. I'm saying this to make a point that the GRA told us that it was only when they brought SML, and SML started operations in May 2020, that they started recording over 400 million liters a month. And it's the reason they attribute the increase in revenue to SML. But this is what KPMG is saying, that before SML started its operation, even in 2019, GRA was already, NPA was already recording up to 400 million liters. And then even when SML came in, GRA and then NPA were recording higher figures. So SML was recording the lowest. And if you look at the same chapter, page number 157, you will see a note there that GRA could not provide digital records of petroleum lifting data from January 2019 to April 2020. To compensate for this, GRA petroleum lifting data published in ESLA reports to the Parliament was utilized. So it appears that if GRA gave this figure to KPMG, KPMG could easily tell that the information was false. So GRA did not provide this figure to KPMG, but the same GRA had published these figures in its report to Parliament. The question we should be asking is, why was the authority hiding this figure? Because if they released these figures, they were going to expose the GRA. And finally, on this score, if you go to the very next page, that is page 158. trends in downstream petroleum revenue. So we are talking of the volumes. We've now come to the revenue. And this is captured in the KPMG report, page 158. Key observations. The following were observed from the analysis of the revenue collected by the GRA over the period 2015 to 2023. 1. An incremental growth in revenue was observed from 2015 to 2023, except for a decline observed solely in 2017. So this shows that the revenue increment did not happen because of SML. 2. One significant, and the word significant is significant. One significant contributor to this growth was the increase in the number of taxes over the years. That is, from 2 taxes in 2015 to 5 taxes in 2023. The next point is, another significant contributor to this growth is the increase in tax rates in 2016 and 2019 and 2021. However, there was a decrease in tax rates in 2017, coinciding with a revenue reduction from 2016 to 2017. Then finally, on this page, the key observation. For any petroleum product lifted to be taxable, it must be declared in ICOMS. GRA's records of petroleum volumes lifted, taxable and non-taxable, are transmitted from NPA's ERDMS into ICOMS. SML's flow meters readings are used for assurance purposes only. These are the findings we made in our documentary. And we had the SML people. If you read the KPMG report, even though there was no needs assessment, the report said that SML's work may have been needed because a previous industry report said there might be under declaration going on. If that is the case, was SML doing under declaration? We put a microphone before the managing director of the company and asked, did you do under declaration? Did you check that? He says no. Did you check dilution? No. Did you check diversion? No. Why are these services on your website as having contributed to the success in the petroleum industry due to your operations with GRA? Or it was a mistake. SML goes to delete all these from their website. So the question is, this report clearly shows that SML did not contribute to the growth in the volumes. In fact, SML recorded the least. If you think they were under declarations that you were brought in and your records were the least of those that were already happening, what you recorded was never at any point used for any tax purposes. And remember, before this report, we asked GRA officials and they confirmed all of these in our documentaries, the documentary produced. So the question is, why were they paid? There is absolutely no justification why the Republic of Ghana should have paid a peswa to this company. And
Right.
if they are talking about judgment debts, I think that we have a very good case to get a judgment debt against those that clearly took money for no work done. And then some people who aided this should be prosecuted. And it's very instructive to note that the finance ministry, headed by Ken Oforiatta, in 2023, said the finance minister, in a letter, the letter said the finance minister had determined that the services of SML should be extended to the gold mining sector and the oil production sectors. And we are now learning that the ministry failed or refused to conduct a value for money audit. So if you failed to conduct that audit, on what basis did Ken Oforiatta make this determination? And we wrote to the Minerals Commission And the commission said they knew nothing about it. They were not consulted.
Okay.
We wrote to the Petroleum Commission. They knew nothing about it.
Right.
And then the MPA, so the regulators in the sectors didn't know about it. So on what basis did the Minister of Finance cause this to be done to a point that Ghana was committed to over 100 million US dollars a year's contract to this company based on what we are learning? And Samson...
So Manasseh, don't go around the figures again, particularly for a good reason. You should know why I'm saying, I don't need to mention it, that you have to face the courts over this. So let's put that aside. But I just wanted briefly to ask you, on the, we know, for example, that Amishadai came in 2019 when these things were already going on. We know that Christian Soti had been working with the previous Commissioner General, and then he had also come from the Controller and Accountant General's office. That is a point you highlighted. What was the purpose?
The purpose is that the technical advisor to the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, if that technical advisor is competent and knows his or her job, they would not advise the GRA to go into this contract in the first place. Because it doesn't take a genius to visit SML and conclude that it was doing the work that was akin to the Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote a classic short story titled The Emperor's New Clothes. They were doing practically nothing. And when you visit them and you interact with them, you will come to a singular conclusion that these people are doing nothing. And so it came as a surprise when people like Samuel Atachia, when people like Ransford Jampo of the University of Ghana would visit only SML and come back to make certain pronouncements that they were doing great. I wonder how they are feeling, Professor Jampo and then the people like Atachia reading this report. But what I'm saying is that if you have the technical advisor,
all right,
advising GRA to go into this contract with SML, then the contracts are awarded, and you leave your job as a technical advisor at GRA to now be the managing director of SML. These are facts that we put out for people to draw the connection.
All right. Thank you very much, Manasseh. And this is not a fact. That is not a fact upon which you have been sued. So I'm his lawyer, and he's been sued over this, but this is not one of the facts over which he has been sued. So we'll deal with it.
So you're guiding your clients in this testimony on air.
No. We'll do that. We'll do that at the appropriate time. You mentioned Atachia. I must state that Atachia has said, quote, "We are not going to swallow hook, line, and sinker whatever Jubilee House is saying, but we will look at it and also do our recommendation for the House to look at it. This is our approach." So he is not, as it were, just minded to do the propaganda job of defending even without facts and simply just defending blindly. He's not doing that. If you can do me 30 seconds or a minute, because I need to go for a break.
So, on the issue of valuation, when we moved into destination inspection, I was a young career person at the time. I lodged the first destination inspection document with BIVAC. Now, BIVAC had two gentlemen there. One, Mr. McBruce, and then the other one, I've forgotten his name. These are people who were experienced in the Ministry of Trade and who understood valuation. At that time, in those two inspection companies we had, BIVAC and the GSL, they had customs officers who who had access to the World Customs Organization's database. And they were in those entities doing the valuation. So the capacity for doing valuation itself was sitting or is sitting in customs. So there's no reason why it should have gone out.
Okay.
Now, Bright said that we should look at the law, procurement law. If we have to look at any part of our body of laws, it is the powers that are concentrated in one person. The first one being the president. The second one, in my opinion, as a student of tax law, is the commissioner of the GRA. The third one is the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
Because all these analogous laws defer to him as the minister.
Right. And somebody sent a message trying to make a correlation that the way Manasseh mentions the finance minister, he should be thinking about what is happening to those who are being prosecuted over the ambulance case in this regard. Thank you very much. I return to share your views with the rest of the world, but the Telecoms Chamber wants me to tell Sam George that he cannot denigrate the industry without evidence. They say that you cannot be saying that the telcos are stealing from the state.
Yeah.
They are not. That currently there is a common platform that takes real-time data from the telcos, and there has been no theft found. So please, don't do this to them.
My big brother engineer Ken Ashibea sent me the message, but he himself knows. And
all right, okay.
Bias is known based on the telcos.
Right.
We all know.
Right.
He himself has challenges with the common platform.
All right, so we will not go into another debate on that. And for the many of you who are sending your messages not about the issues we are discussing, but about my outfits, you can get them one of this, or even better, from Konati Clothing. They are located at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. You can call them on 0244 676732, 0244 676732. Konati Clothing. What you wear counts, and they say they are giving up to 10% discounts if you are making purchases, making orders between now and Father's Day and between now and Idul Adha. Is it? We'll be right back.
You finish.
I am not I'm not occupying an office for profit in Rock City, and I am not receiving emolument.
But you are the director.
But I
you
am
the director.
I am the no.
From the corporation articles
hold on.
You are the director.
If you go to hold on, be patient, please. If you go to Registrar General, the forms ask for 2 directors. I am one director and another person. But in the functional role that I will receive emoluments or occupy an office for profit in the organization, or my activities in the organization will prevent me from doing my work in Parliament or as a minister, does not come in. So,
you're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guests have been Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, who is traveling at this moment but still makes time because of his commitment to Ghana. Kobina Atabedu is procurement specialist and management consultant. I save his name on my phone as procurement guru. Manasseh Azure Awine, investigative journalist, and presently studying at the Harvard University. Now, Samuel Nete George, MP Ningo Prampram, Deputy Ranking Member, Communications Committee of Parliament and Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. He is here in the studio with us, together with Kobina Atabedu. And Bryce Simmons, once again, will open this next chapter for us briefly before he leaves us. We will also be joined by Lord Mensah, Associate Professor of Finance, University of Ghana Business School. He likes to say, pump up, make sure that if you have to talk, we are talking. And some elders say, this is our country. Even in the midst of talking every day about these issues, see what is happening. What if we were not talking? Here are some of your messages. Adreno, greatness, it's excellence reign. Is that your name? You say sole sourcing is a big problem in Ghana now, and contracts are given to unqualified companies to just loot the state for no work done. Blueprints, Esikado Ketam, you say Newsfile, Ghanaians talk too much and do little. Today, SML and GRA, the next SNIT, we should allow state institutions to work. Really? Tanko Oswan says, SML is a true definition of create, loot, and share. The fact that GRA cannot withhold a tax from an entity working for it should tell you the magnitude of the rot in the revenue agency. You tweet at Nyavrox, NyavoX. The next NDC government should demand the retrieval of all payments made by the government to SML under the illegal agreements, which have occasioned a huge financial loss to the state. Well, Martin Amidu would have gone to court and then say, because they are illegal, pay the money back, and then we'll go and chase Woyome. Again, this one says, indisputable data published by Imani Africa show clearly that the rate of increase in petroleum revenue has virtually been the same before and after SML's illegal entry into the downstream petroleum sector. Thanks for those messages. Now, let's begin again with Bright. But before we do that, I must tell you that this show is paid for by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 33 plus years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Syntex Tags, it's strong, it's tough, and Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Now, let's begin with Bright Simmons. Yes, Bright, on the back of this intention by SNIT to sell off, or as it were, bring in these private entities into its business, let's hear what you have to say, and first, whether you do agree with the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance, who say that, and I quote, further exacerbating our concerns are revelations. So they issued a statement on the back of the SP petition and among other things. And they made commentaries that suggest that things are getting worse. And then they got to this paragraph and said, further exacerbating our concerns are revelations that SNIT and the Rock City Hotel, owned by the current Minister for Agriculture, are engaged in negotiations to purchase 4 hotels, including the Labadi Beach Hotel, one of Ghana's most esteemed and profitable hotels. One may ask, what is the public interest justification for a decision like that? And where is the minister raising the resources to acquire these assets? We welcome the actions taken by Mr. Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the MP, and his petition to Shraj, as it signals an important step towards addressing these issues. We also welcome the intervention of the organized labor, TUC and CLOCSAC, as owners of the pension funds. Indeed, everyone who pays SNIT contributions should be interested. These developments raise serious concerns about our fight against corruption and the prospects for accountable governance. Yes, Bright.
Thank you very much, Samson. Can you hear me well?
Very clearly.
Okay, so I have to be upfront about my incapacity on this matter to a certain extent. So our usual sources have failed us, and we don't have the full details of the Rock City submissions which have characterized or rather qualified it for this benefit. So some of my comments are about SNIT's investment practices generally. And I think I will be focusing on why I think the country could be better served by the way SNIT does its investment. I will not be able to make emphatic comments about Rock City itself because I don't have the information.
Great.
But we hope that in the course of the coming days and weeks, we will be challenging SNIT to put out all the information that they intend to submit to SHRAJ to the wider public. This is not a matter only for SHRAJ. And we commend the Member of Parliament who has initiated this inquiry. So let's start off with our concerns about SNIT generally and the way that it's managing the pensions of the workers of this country. The truth is, as everybody knows now, the International Labour Organization has an arrangement with SNIT in which for relatively little money, it conducts actuarial analysis for SNIT. And that is conducted, the most recent one. And the conclusion, the most important conclusion from that study is that if we want SNIT to be sustainable, we have to pay double what we are currently paying in terms of our contribution to SNIT. So essentially the rate that we contribute at to the SNIT funds have to go up from about 11% to 22%. This is a huge and massively important point, because what that means is that we are at a stage where if we don't pay more into SNIT, SNIT will be unviable. We also know that ILO recommends we should increase the pension age by about 2 years as one of the pathways to making sure that the fund is sustainable. And thirdly, this is the reason for why these additional sacrifices are being demanded. Essentially, the reason why you have to pay more, the reason why you have to retire later as a worker in Ghana is because SNIT is experiencing significant falling rates of return. The money that you've given to SNIT is supposed to be invested to make sure it can continue to pay pensions going into the future. But the way it's been investing the money, and for various reasons affecting the way it's been investing the money, the returns on those investments have been falling significantly for a while now. And it's currently at one of its lowest that we've ever seen. The real rate of return, when you account for inflation, is one of the lowest that we've seen over the last couple of years. So that is the context. We've also been studying SNIT's activities for a while now at Iman. And there are a number of areas where we have significant concern. Some of them are exemplary. They exemplify why SNIT is in such trouble. We've been looking, for instance, at how it disposes of assets that it considers obsolete. You know, we've been in the trenches with the EC on this matter. So we started to look at other organizations that are in the public sector to see. And we've noticed that they've been gaining the residual values of some of these assets to the point where it allows for very rapid depreciation, and then they sell off and declare a profit because the residual values of these assets have been so depressed that it makes it look as if they are doing the country a favor by selling these assets off. So vehicles that are worth over 4 billion cedis are sold for about 460 million cedis, and a profit is declared because of the fact that, you know, the residual values of these assets have been so depressed. And this raises very important issues that we intend to be going into further. Now, having said that context, one, that, you know, the falling rate of return means that workers are being asked to double the amount that we contribute to SNIT, which will be, of course, at our cost, right? Because the employer only takes a percentage, a certain share of the burden. The rest of the burden comes to us as contributors. On top of that, you know, we have this situation with the requirement that we should increase pension age and the rest of it. So in that context, we have to ask ourselves whether the actions that SNIT now purpose to take in terms of divesting these assets off, these hotels, fall within a context of investment prudence that we are comfortable with. So I will, for instance, point to people that are not aware of, you know, whose attention have not been drawn to this, to take a very close look at what has happened at the NHTC, for instance. And what you find with a National Trust Holding Company is the fact that sometime in 2012, SNIT decided that it was going to go and more or less privatize one of its very important funds, the informal sector fund, SISF, and decided that it was going to go into a strategic partnership with NHTC and give that to them.
That's supposed to be NTHC, right?
Yes, National Trust Holding Company.
Right.
And what has happened since then is something very bizarre and very opaque. What we do know is that the company appears to be insolvent because people can't get their money out. There's agitation in the sector. SNIT is backpedaling informal sector workers to contribute without accounting to us what has happened to the monies that were transferred to NTHC and the investment that it made into NTHC, including providing resources and access for NTHC to be able to do the work that is done. So that brings up the point about the way it does its investment generally, and it raises questions about whether we can trust its judgment. Because part of the challenge about this Rock City transaction, apart from the conflict of interest issues, which I don't want to go into in great detail, because as I said, I want to look at all the information. For instance, has the minister set up a blind trust? What are the mechanisms that he's imposed to ensure there is true arm's length transaction involved here? And he's not using his political power to influence the transaction. I don't have all the details, so I'll be careful. I'll be wary.
That's a fair point to make, a fair disclosure or disclaimer to make.
Indeed. But when I look at the way SNIT makes its investments, it in a way underlines and to a certain extent vindicates why so many people are so suspicious of its judgment. So first of all, we take a look at the overall portfolio of SNIT. And what you see on the screen, as of 2020, that's the latest information that you can find in the public domain about how SNIT has split the money that we've given to it, the contribution we've made, how it splits it among different investment categories. Now pay attention to the returns that it's making on the top, the equity investment. You can tell that at the last reckoning, SNIT was making its best returns from unlisted equity. What is unlisted equity? Essentially, it's investment that it has in companies, but those investments are not on the stock market. So you and I cannot go and buy them. It makes these off the market, in essence. Now, it tells us, therefore, that that category of unlisted equities is a very profitable segment. We then go into it and say, okay, what are these companies and what are some of them? And you find out that the hotels that it wants to divest of are in that segment. They are in the unlisted equity segment. Okay. And there are a number of companies also in the unlisted equity segment. We don't have the breakdown, unfortunately, to determine among the unlisted equities in which these hotels are a category, a subcategory, whether the hotels are underperforming as a category. What I do know for sure is that when you look at this alternative investment category, particularly the real estate segment, there are serious challenges in terms of its ability to recoup investment that is made. It's put money into companies like Westfield Ridge, Switchback, Trust F-Line, FSS, etc. And if you read Public Account Committee records, you see hearing after hearing continue to talk about SNIT's difficulties in recouping investment from these areas. We don't see the same degree of concern being expressed about the hotels and some of these other areas. When you look at some other categories, we also know that the likes of what do you call that? The metro transport, the likes of the metro transport, the STC and the rest have been underperforming. Now, the question I'm trying to leave in the minds of your viewers, Samson, is what is the strategy based on which SNIT is currently deciding to exit some investments in the unlisted equity segment, given that is what is the highest performing. So essentially, when you take that category and you find out that it's doing very well as a group, and it decided that it wants to take some of them out and sell them because there's no strategic fit or it's not making enough money. We need some kind of document from SNIT that says that here is our strategy of the kinds of industries we want to be in Ghana. Some of the industries that we are in Ghana are performing at this rate, and we don't think they meet our benchmark. Currently, what they are saying is simply that we should just trust their judgment. And I think that given their history, their historical underperformance, we can't just trust their investment, but their judgment. They have to explain to us what is the methodology based on which they decided that after this particular set of industries in Ghana, we don't want to invest in those industries anymore. The hotel industry as a segment in Ghana is a booming sector until recently, until after COVID. We saw massive investment going into hotels, particularly those in the 2-star, 3-star category. And we've also seen some continued investment in the 4-star and 5-star category. Now, the question is, are they saying to us that given all these other categories they have, that particular segment is the most troubling? Probably not. So which other segment are they divesting from? What is the strategy that is driving it? What is the benchmark performance by which account they then determine that this particular industry we don't want to continue to invest in, and or this particular company doesn't fit our profile anymore? We've not seen anything like that. In fact, everything has been done with great opacity. And the reason why people don't trust the government, whenever they see a minister's name, they immediately become agitated, is because we don't receive enough assurance from the people that are managing our resources that they mean to do so in our best interest. And it's very clear from that evidence. So that's a very important point that we have to make. The other point that is critical is that, as everybody now knows, organized labor has significant representation on the board. I think 5 members or so out of a 12-member board of trustees. Now, if organized labor says they were not sufficiently consulted, and I've even heard union leaders say they don't know about it, then that raises the question whether indeed this is a process that is fully backed by the board of trustees. Because I don't understand how we can have organized labor representation on the board of trustees. And on that board of trustees, and if that board of trustees indeed has been intimately involved in these transactions, then organized labor comes back and says that we completely, adamantly disagree. It can only mean that the organized labor representatives on the board are not fully briefed. And if they are not fully briefed, then it means that the board of trustees does not either have a properly functioning investment committee that looks at the dynamics of this investment they've made and the portfolio results, and then determine that these categories, etc., we need to exit or we need to enter. Because if you have a properly functioning investment committee, organized labor will have to be represented on there, given their overall representation on the board of trustees as a whole.
All right.
If that was the case, then my view would be that we have a very significant problem. Last point I'll make. If you look at the set of hotels that have been listed, some of those hotels are performing very well.
That's true.
Even if you ignore the whole category, the hotels category, and you just focus purely on some specific companies like Labadi Beach, Grand Regency, you have to ask yourself, how could SNIT, a company or an organization whose overall rate of return is dropping, still have the need to divest of companies that appear to be returning? Why, for instance, did SNIT decide that it was going to sack the private sector manager of Labadi Beach, which I think was Legacy Hotels or their successor? He decided it was going to sack them and dismanage the hotel itself. And just a few months thereafter, went through the process of attempting now to dispose it off. When everybody knows that Labadi Beach is one of the profitable hotels in Ghana, it doesn't make any sense. So my view is that we need to be able to force SNIT, compel SNIT, to outline its investment strategy, explain who is on the investment committee, what has been the process through which the investment committee has selected these companies and determined that they don't fit either strategically or from a profit benchmark point of view, SNIT's future ambitions. And I think until we do that, we'll be heavily incapacitated in doing full justice to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in the face of what you know now, with the exception of the, very good sort of disclosure you make about not having sufficient documentation covering Rock City's bids, what do you think should be happening? Organized labor says this must be halted now. And they've gotten some significant support, including from the CSOs that have come together under the umbrella of the, democracy group, Accountable Democracy Group.
So I think everybody knows that SNIT's funds are primarily contributory in nature. The workers of this country own those funds. Mm-hmm. Now, organized labor is the principal representative of that stakeholder group. If organized labor says no, it's absolutely impossible for SNIT to override that degree of stakeholder disagreement and move forward. So until they satisfy organized labor, I don't think there is even a deal on the table. Because the bulk of the money that they are investing, you are investing money on our behalf. Now, the people you are investing the money on whose behalf, of course, you are experts, and there is some due deference to the fact that you have expertise, and we will give you that room. But the fact of the matter is that you still derive your legitimacy from your contributors. And their most organized representatives is organized labor. 5 out of 12 or so of your trustees.
Right. In that context, the Constitution, right from its preamble to Article 1, says sovereignty springs from us, we the people, and that sovereignty resides in us, and that we, the powers of government, are to be exercised for our welfare and on our behalf. And yet, we vote people into power. It's not everything we want they do. It's the same thing that applies in this situation, does it not?
Except that in the corporate governance point of view, it's almost as if the AGM, the shareholders of SNIT are the contributors. That's the best analog we can find from a corporate governance point of view. So in that narrow context, I struggle to see how, in the political economic context of Ghana today, if somebody from SNIT does not beat, a retreat, and with their tail between their leg, go over to organized labor and patch up, I just don't see from a political economic point of view how they will be able to move forward. I just don't see.
There are sometimes, though, that the things that the people or a section of the people may desire and protest over, it's actually not what is in the best interest of everyone, and what the leadership is doing may be preferred. Thank you very much, Bright. So we will take a quick break here, a very final break, and return to my guests in the studio on this discussion. And many are saying loud applause to Sam Okujeto, and some say that Ablakwa, that he's doing far better than many investigative journalists. The matters began to come up, they began to simmer, we became aware of some of these issues, but the journalists could not proactively investigate to be able to make a publication. It took him. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. We'll say many thanks to Bright Simmons, always, for dedicating time, doing such heavy lifting job, and helping with the analysis and the discussion in a way that is very informed and data-based. Now, my guest in the studio, I'll begin with Sam George this time round. So, Sammy Okujeto Ablakwa is the guy to blame for all of this happening, right?
He's the guy to be celebrated. Something. Bright says he didn't have all the documents, and that's fair. But I think that there are some things we don't need documentation on. For example, Article 284 of the Constitution, which talks about conflict of interest. And let me read. A public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the function of his office. And then I follow up with Article 78.3, which says, a minister of state shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly, unless otherwise permitted by the Speaker, acting on the recommendations of a committee of Parliament on the grounds that A, holding that office will not prejudice the work of a minister, and B, that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that office.
The same thing is repeated in Article 98, Clause 2, for MPs.
For MPs, yes. And so that's why Parliament has a committee on members holding office of profit. It is chaired by the first Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Joseph Osei-Owusu, MP for Bekwai. And even lawyers who still run their chambers submit themselves to that committee to get a certificate to practice their craft whilst holding office. Now, the Honorable Brian Echampo, in his response on another network, has admitted that he has not submitted himself to that committee to get a certificate from the Speaker. One. So he's holding an office for profit other than that of a Minister of State and other than that of a Member of Parliament without a certificate from Mr. Speaker. You would say, but how do you say he's holding an office of profit? Because he stated that he's a non-executive shareholder. Well,
It's a company, not him. The company has separate legal personality from him.
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I was going. Thanks to the Honorable Kujeto Ablakwa, who has made a request from the Registrar of Companies Records. There are 2 directors of the company.
Oh, I thought he himself says he's the only director.
No, there are 2. There are 2 shareholders.
Okay.
In fact, there are 2 directors. He's the only shareholder, but he and a lady, one Mrs. Clotte, are the directors of the company. Only 2 directors of Rock City. He is the only shareholder, holds 100% of the shares, and when you go to the beneficial ownership, he is the sole beneficial owner.
He says he's a non-executive director.
It doesn't mean that, but whether you are
non-executive... He says he doesn't take any profits. He doesn't get paid. No, he doesn't take any monies from the entity.
Help us here. You are the senior lawyer here. When they say somebody is the beneficial owner of a company,
in this case, it's not beneficial owner.
How?
In this case, he's the owner.
He's the owner and even beneficial owner of it. Now, there are only 2 directors. And he says he has absolutely no knowledge of this transaction. How is the business run? If his own business is engaged in buying 6 hotels, and he is the sole shareholder, and he has absolutely no knowledge of it, are we safe entrusting 6 hotels into the hands of somebody who runs his own business that way?
Actually, if he's a non-executive director, it means he's a controlling mind.
Yes.
So he's directly controlling
what is going on.
Yes.
Again, his own hotel, Rock City Hotel, has been partly operational since 2019. The records again show that since 2019, we have not seen any evidence that Rock City has paid taxes to the government of Ghana. Meanwhile, at least 2 of the hotels that are being offered to him. In 2021, Labadi Beach Hotel paid profit or dividends to SNIT of 10 million Ghana cedis. In 2022, paid dividends or profit to SNIT of 25 million. So in 2 years...
150% growth.
Yes. In fact, I can confidently say that in 2022, their profit was... I paid part of their profit because I had an event there. So me too, I paid some money there. Because it was it's a good facility. It's a profitable 5-star hotel. Making good profit. Now, it's been run now. The other one is the recently renovated Ridge Royal in Cape Coast. Look, and you know, one of the minority shareholders, and again, educate us and correct me if I'm wrong, when you have shareholders, and even though they are minority shareholders, and you are going to, the majority shareholder wants to dispose of his interest, he's under obligation of notifying the minority shareholders of the intention to dispose of his interest and offer them first right of refusal. I know two shareholders in Ridge Royal who only got to find out about this transaction from the news.
So we understand their lawyers wrote to protest.
To protest. Because they were not informed, they were not written. Again, Elmina Beach Resort.
Actually contravenes the Companies Act
in
2019.
Elmina Beach Resort.
If the facts are proving.
Yes. Elmina Beach Resort. The Omanhini of the area, I think that's the
petition they have written.
Yes.
That he...
Stating that they have seen him coming there with his investors on the premises of Elmina, that he's taking it over. Meanwhile, they gave it to the state without requesting full compensation because the state assured them that this was a state enterprise that will provide jobs for their people. Now it is moving into the hands of a private entity. Without their knowledge, the Oman Heni is demanding that SNIT...
Full commercial compensation.
That's full commercial compensation. So you ask yourself, on what basis have we packaged 6 hotels? And you see, something, it's not everything. See, on this particular transaction, and I will mention the name of the former Director General, Tinkran. He sat with a certain Ghanaian. And again, I take full responsibility for what I'm saying. Because this Ghanaian has called me and said to me, he's somebody I know very well. He's been in the hotel industry for over 35 years. Manages one of the biggest hotel chains in the US and across the world. He is their manager. He's Ghanaian. Look, he came and sat with Tinkran and said, I have an interest. If you want, we've heard you want to do this thing. We have an interest. And Tinkran told him point blank that, sorry, it's been decided already. You won't get it.
There are those who speculate that or say that he lost that job because of this particular thing.
It played a role because you see, people had objections to the way things were being done. Again, let's ask ourselves. And you see, this person has said to me, Sam, if Parliament sets up a probe, I will come and testify. And he says, look, you ask yourself in the hotel business, when you have a property that is struggling, you ask yourself two things. Is it the model of operation or is it management? Those are the two key things you look at in a hotel business. Is the model of operating the hotels problematic, or is the model sound but the management is problematic? And so he said they even came in with a proposal that said, don't sell, we would come and do management of the hotels for you and make them profitable. They said no, because it's been cooked. And you see, it is this whole attempt of state capture. La Palme in 2012, again, in 2011, my sister did a function there. At that time, nobody wanted to go to Labadi Beach because La Palme was the ish. Labadi was literally run down before Legacy Hotels came to take it. La Palme was the place. La Palme has been intentionally run down and devalued by the management that was put in place. Look, you have a group CEO who now steps down to take the role of acting MD.
We understand a consultant did the work about...
the valuations.
Yes.
The consultant who valued it at 700,000 and took 600,000.
I understand it was up to 7 million plus Ghana cedis. It's almost a half a million US dollars.
Yes.
Yeah. So some assessment was done.
The cost of paying the assessment, the consultant who did the assessment of the properties to be disposed of.
Valuing the property as what, 7 million cedis?
No. That's the consultancy fee. Yes.
But the cost of the consultancy is almost half the value of the assets he says they should dispose. So
that's the reason I'm because if you break it down, you strip the assets down,
yes,
and you pick the real estate itself.
Yes.
What is the value of the real estate? The land on which
it's sitting. So you clearly see even the valuation itself is problematic. But you see, it has to be valued at that rate. And you see, someone said something, and that's the last point I'll make, so that I see you're itching to come in. Right now, if the reality is that SNIT wants to dispose of these hotels using high purchase, because that's basically what is going on. High purchase.
What do you mean?
It means they don't have cash.
The buyer is not paying full value for the properties. He's made a part deposit.
I'm not able to do that.
AI, thank you. He's paying a small deposit.
And he's going to
run the assets of the hotels and use the revenue to pay you for what. So if he can run it.
Are you talking like what was that in the ECG thing?
Yes. More like the PDS.
More like the
PDS.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the same scheme. So Brian has been given the 6 hotels. He's not paid full value for the 6 hotels.
4, not 6.
4. He's not paid the full value of the 4, of what their valuation is. He's paid, or he's alleged to have paid a part of the amount. He's now supposed to run the hotels, make money from the hotels, and use to pay off the rest of it. If the hotels can be run properly, such that they can pay that value, does that not come back to the question I raised at first?
Can we say Rock City rather than Brian? Because
equals to Brian.
Because it is when there are circumstances in law. In law, it is when there are circumstances like fraud that you pierce the veil and look for who is behind it.
But it does not appear to be fraudulent.
Yes. So you hold on. You have been itching to speak. Let me bring on Lord Mensah, Prof. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Samson, and good afternoon. Sorry, good morning to my co-panelists in the studio.
Right. What do you make of this with the limited time that we have? What do you make of it? Organized labor and also all those calling for a cessation of this deal, including the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance. What do you make of this?
I think we have to treat it as a business. And for business, we expect SNIT to make a business case. And if they are to make a business case, then they may have to convince contributors. on the options available. And I look at this from three different streams. The first one is the current state where they decided to divest. And that is where possibly we may have to go into, the experience of, the company that is, buying the shares and all those. The possibility of, post, procurement contract, the monitoring and evaluation. If it's not a complete layoff, then SNIT will be expecting some cash flows after, the sale of the shares. Thus, Rock City has that kind of capacity, that experience to deliver as expected. If you look at Rock City, the present location of one of their major assets at the Kwewu, can we say they're making, the necessary occupancy rate to warrant, the diversion of shares to Rock City? Those are the business questions we need to ask. Another option is to look for a special purpose vehicle, a hotel management agency to manage it for you. And if you put all this together with the current, diversion that we are discussing, then you are making a case for contributors. Samson, let's also look at the market timing. If you want to, lay off an asset of such stature, you have to look at, is the time conducive, for the asset to attract the market value that is supposed to be. Looking at our economic conditions now, the best asset you can hold in your portfolio as a pension, agency is real estate. It doesn't matter the performance, because if you offload your asset and you receive liquid funds, and I believe that was objective, of the kind of, sales that SNIT is making. And in that regard, you receive this liquid fund, where are you going to invest it? Per the MPRA, regulations on pension investment, if you take out the real estate, all other investment you must hold must go into government instruments. Are you going to lend to government? A government that has done, haircut on its instrument? So the market timing is very, very important. And I believe all these things were not taken into consideration, and probably SNIT relied solely on auditing report that were coming that says that those hotels are not functioning, therefore they may have to lay them off. Laying off, interest in asset, you have to consider the market. And, if you don't take care, it will be a problem. Now, taking into consideration the current discussion that we are having, which was the option that they have taken, the shares diversion, we may have to ask the experience and all those of the company that is taking over. Would they be able to deliver as expected? If the record shows that they won't be able to deliver, then obviously that is where we try to question the fair value of the shares that were, diverted, and then also the possible conflict of interest that we're bringing in, a minister of state who is at the same time, an MP of a certain MP. So from where I sit, I think these are things that we may have to look at when it comes to the business aspect of this diversion.
Well, when you mentioned the conflict of interest matter, as in Article 78, Clause 3, and Article 98, Clause 2. 98, Clause 2 says if you're an MP, you must go through this. 78, Clause 3 says if you're a minister, you must go through this. So he's minister, he's MP, he should have gone through this. What exactly do you see here that may be problematic for someone who is a director of a business, a non-executive director of a business, being run without his involvement in the day-to-day activities of that business? That's what he says. The law says, the Constitution says, a minister of state, you can add, a member of parliament, shall not hold any other office of profit or emolument, whether private or public, and whether directly or indirectly, unless otherwise permitted by the Speaker acting on the recommendations of a committee of Parliament on the ground that holding that office will not prejudice the work of the minister, and that no conflict of interest arises or would arise as a result of the minister holding that office. What has come to his office that he is seeking to compromise where there will be a conflict of interest?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you may have to look at, I mean, the situation on the grounds, and then possibly look at clear definition as you've laid out. I've heard on other platforms that, they're saying the minister is a minister of Agric, and therefore he's a bit distant from, the issue at hand now. But I can tell you, conflict of interest is conflict of interest. It doesn't matter the persons involved. It doesn't matter the time. And also another platform where they've been indicating that, it happened some time ago. This is what politicians have been doing. So what is wrong with, this current, sale?
So what's the wrong? Is there wrong in the purchase by his hotel, or that the value is not what it should be bought for? In a situation where there have been bidders and their bid has won.
The law that you read, right? I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, the law in its own wisdom knows very well that if you allow such a thing, it can compromise fair value. And that is where the problem is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lord Mensah. And now to you, Governor Atabedu. Let's hear what your view on this is. But I'd like to invite you, before we get to a close, that if you have never seen the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokonu, Araba Esaba Tokonu, in a relaxed mode, having a conversation, join the Law Show tomorrow at 2 p.m. and watch her take on most of the things that you are concerned about and how they reflect on the delivery of justice. And the Law Show is doing that in collaboration with the Accra Bar on the occasion of Mother's Day when they visited the Chief Justice. Yes.
Okay. So, as a management specialist and a business leader, when you hear of something like this, you begin to ask, there's a way we think, and you begin to ask yourself a few questions. And I put a number of them down. And I'll show you, anytime it came up, I'll show it to George and I'll say, here. So Bright made a point, George made a point, Prof has made a point. I'll start from the top, because if a fish would rot, it starts from the head. Now let's go to the NPA, the National Pensions Act, and let's go to Section 35, which says that the governing board of the trust is a board of trustees consisting of A, a chairperson, B, 2 persons nominated by the president, at least one of whom is a woman, 2 representatives from Employers Association, 4 representatives from organized labor, 1 representative from National Pensioners Association, 1 representative from Ministry of Finance, not below the rank of a director, 1 representative from the Security Services, and then a Director General. Now, SNIT is a specialized institution. It's a professional, pensions is a division of insurance that looks after annuation and superannuation. So you would expect that at the board level, the Director General must first of all be a certified professional insurance person. That's the first one. Then there are certain skills and competencies, and I've had the benefit of working with this act, or working in that industry for 18 months.
Right.
So I know a bit about it. There are certain competencies that you would find. The first one is insurance, like I said, but also revenue mobilization and how to mobilize the funds into the organization. Then you need investment appraisal. So when the money comes in, what do we do with it? So you must have an investment board that will do the investment appraisals. Then you need actuarial science. Actuarial science will tell you that if I put this money here over 30 years, over 50 years, this is how much will come back. So it makes sense to put it here or not. Then there's funds management, how to do the placements, when to hold, when to let go, and all that. Then there's accounting, finance, and all that. Then monitoring and evaluation, project management. These are core skills you must find in an insurance company or in a pensions company. Now, if you look at the description of the board here, none of it. So it means you are going to have a board of how many people there, whom it is possible that none of them has any of these competencies. So how would they be able to direct? A board of directors are the controlling minds.
The problem about the appointments to the board by our presidents our imperial presidents, they appoint over in excess of 4,000 or 6,000 or so, we are told.
But there is the reason why we have a Public Services Commission.
Correct.
That ordinarily is supposed to be doing recruitments.
But they are not powerful.
Service.
They are not powerful.
No, it is because the politicians
can they resist the politicians?
That function. You are a politician.
I'm a citizen at the table, with a chair at the table of politicians.
See, so the problem of this country is the politics that gets into a rather specialist area. So if you put up the board right now and the membership, I wish your production team could run a background check on them. The same thing is happening at the PPA. And I had the benefit of writing to the office of the president and copied the speaker and the council of state. And I said, if I look at the PPA board, there's a gap. The same thing is happening here. Now, I have a number of questions I put down, and they all raise them. So it goes without saying, it's like common sense. For example, if you want to sell a business, Professor talked about the market.
We're only a minute to go, unfortunately.
Professor talked about the market. The question is, who are their peers? 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star, 0-star. How are they performing? So if those ones are performing well, why is yours not performing? The next question is it because of the model you are running, or is it because of there's too much interference? If it is a profitable market and you are not doing well, it is possibly because there's too much interference. Why don't you give it out to a management company? So the solution is not to sell. Now, the question I'll ask the board is, where is their portfolio analysis report? In management, we use models and tools. For portfolio analysis, you are using a BCG matrix, which will tell you, these are the mix of investments I have. These are their performance. Which ones do I let go? If you go into that one, you would see, is this supposed to be here?
We should certainly make another time to enjoy the seminar that Kobna Tabedu is taking us through to learn about procurement, insurance, and what ought to be done right in this circumstance. But there are other people who are raising that, apart from what may look morally wrong, are we not trying to say, when it is outsiders coming in, that is good, but when it is one of our own who have been able to gather the muscle, financial muscle and business acumen to be able to run, take over some of these institutions, then we have a problem with, and that will not help us grow. All right, my outfits, once again, is by Konati Clothing, and they are giving you 10% off if you are purchasing between now, making an order between now and Father's Day and Idul Adha, correct? Their number to call is 0244 676732. 676732. 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, join me with Chief Justice, exclusive on the law, on this platform.